What's going on, everybody? Welcome into this edition of Warchant TV. I'm Aslan Hajavani, joined by managing editor of Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminoles sports source, Ira Schoffel. Use the promo code below for a 30 free day trial. Hit the thumbs up button here on YouTube. Even though you probably don't like the news we're about to sort of discuss and bat around here, we come bearing bad news. We're both wearing orange. You should already know that. That's the symbol. On Saturday, it was announced via email that head football coach of Florida State University, Mike Norvell, had tested positive for COVID-19. The backup plan in place is for an interim to sort of take the reins while he is out, and that's going to be deputy head coach Chris Thompson. That title sounded kind of funky at first, Ira, but now it sort of makes sense in a serendipitous kind of way, it seems.
Yeah, and that was one of the first hires Mike Norvell made when he became head coach, was to bring in Chris Thompson. He was so interested in him being his deputy head coach that he hired him without even knowing what position he was going to coach. There was a chance he was going to coach offensive line, depending on what the assistant coaching staff ended up looking like. At the end of the day, they got Alex Atkins in to coach the offensive line. So Chris Thompson shifted over to tight ends coach. He's probably overqualified for that. A lot of times tight ends coaches are glorified recruiters, but he's been an offensive line head coach or an offensive line coach, been an assistant head coach, has been a head coach at a Division II level. So he was a guy that Mike Norvell wanted to kind of help run the program overall, not just coach that position. And as you said, he's going to be thrust into that role in a way that nobody probably would have expected.
Right. It's 2020. I guess we should not have expected anything less in terms of just sheer madness to happen if you're a Florida State fan. But if there's anybody that's going to sort of take the reins for an indefinite amount of time, Thompson's not a bad choice. As you can see his resume here on the screen, stops at TCU, Arizona State, which is, I guess, mainly where he and Mike Norvell forged their relationship. He has had coaching experience. We do know, I guess, or do we not know? I mean, he will be the coach for Miami, Chris Thompson. Do we even know how long Mike Norvell is going to be out of action, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be the head coach for Miami. He'll be the fill-in head coach, interim head coach for the Miami game. The return to play protocols that Florida State has, which I think are similar to all the other ACC schools, is you have to sit out 10 days. You have to isolate for 10 days before you can come back to play. And I think if you're asymptomatic, for a player, if they've been asymptomatic, that 10 days basically is it. They can come back after that. If they were symptomatic, then I believe that it could go a little bit longer because you have to be 3 days without any symptoms at all. But I don't know. As far as overall, though, a head coach is subject to the same rules any coach would be. So it's a 10-day wait. I believe he was tested positive on the Friday test that the team did. So you'd be looking at maybe the Monday or Tuesday after the Miami game. So unless anything else happens, he should be back. They expect him back for the Jacksonville State game, but Mike Norvell won't be there for the Miami game. It's
crazy, though. I mean, the fact that he tested positive for the protocols means it's a 10-day absence. Had he been in a high-risk situation around somebody who tested positive, he'd be out for 14 days. So I guess that's sort of like the silver lining, right? It's only 10 days. It could have been 14.
Yeah, the protocols they put out with the 14-day window, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure if they're still following those or not. But those were the days, the original numbers they put out there. But yeah, it's just for the tests, it's actually 10 days. I've never understood why that's different, but you're right. It does appear to be different.
I assume he'll not be able to be in the coach's office. I know players have to isolate and quarantine. I mean, I guess this stuff doesn't apply to a coach. I mean, what will he be able to do in the lead up to the Miami game? And then I guess maybe even on game day, do we have an idea of if he can fulfill a role, whether it's play calling or, radioing in? And is he going to be like Hugh Freeze? Is he going to be in the press box in the hospital bed, phoning stuff down?
I think let's start with game week. I do think that he'll be able to take part in all the meetings. They'll be able to put him up, I guess, on a big screen on Zoom. And so he'll be able to be part of the team during all those conversations, planning meetings, position meetings, talking to the quarterbacks, talking to all the players during the week. And I would assume, he'll be able to watch film from home. So he'll be able to give feedback to the coaches from the film each day. So that all will be, I won't say seamless, but the one positive to this is, they lived in a virtual environment for 3 or 4 months. And so they really got that down pat. The players are used to talking to their coaches via Zoom. They spent so much time doing that during the offseason. So I think that part during the week, Won't be terrible. They would love to have his energy at practice. I mean, we've seen him in the spring. I mean, he's definitely a high energy guy at practice. You'd love to have that energy at practice. But in terms of him being able to get information, seeing what they're doing, communicating to the players, I think they'll be able to handle that as well as possible. You talk about game day, though. From what we hear, it sounds like some of that's still a little up in the air, but more than likely, they're going to take that position, the accountable coach. You get a head coach and 10 accountable assistant coaches. If Chris Thompson becomes the head coach, they're more likely to promote somebody else on the staff. And I don't think this has been finalized yet, but I think they're going to be more likely to promote somebody, one of the support staff guys, somebody around the program, into one of those on-field coaches for game day. And I don't think there's going to be a whole lot Mike Norvell can do actually on game day. But during the week, he'll be very involved, is probably as involved as he ever would have been. Just it's going to be via technology.
Right. On game day, the Hayes is already in the barn, so he won't even really be needed on game day. They'll be fine without him, I'm sure. I'm being sarcastic on that. It's going to be quite an adventure, I imagine, even though I'm sure they have a plan in place. Every coaching staff has a plan in place. If one of their guys goes down, you obviously hope it would not be your head coach. Do you think fans need to brace themselves for maybe other coaches or other players having to isolate or quarantine, having come in contact with the head football coach? I mean, I'm like picturing guys stopping and hanging out in his office for 30 minutes at a time. And I don't know. I mean, is that something that fans should brace for, or were there mitigation things that they had in place to maybe, I don't know, inoculate their number one guy?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that. I do think that they took more precautions with the head coach than anybody else. I think they've taken precautions with everybody. I mean, we did the stories during the summer about all the things they put in place to bring football back, to do it safely. And, they've really taken great precautions across the board. And they've continued once the season started. But I do think, with the head coach, you certainly don't want anything to happen to your head football coach. And so it's not like there's been, whereas a head coach normally would have all of those face-to-face close interactions during a course of a season, I think they have limited that to a degree, at least without masks or PPE. So I think that from what we can gather, it doesn't sound like there's been any kind of big outbreak so far. You never know. We all know how testing goes. They could find out Wednesday or Friday when they have testing, I think Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. One of these tests next week could go poorly. But that's kind of one of the strange things about this case right now with Mike Norvell is it wasn't like there was a huge outbreak and, some coaches got it. They really haven't had a lot of other cases from what we understand. So, you'd like to hope that because he is kind of removed a little bit from the day-to-day with all the players, that maybe it won't spread and maybe they did catch it in time.
Right. And the statement that they released, athletics director David Coburn, said that he had been feeling fine. He himself, Mike Norvell, said in the statement that his wife and his daughter both tested negative. I'm sure, as you said, the testing seems to have been going fine. So it probably is kind of a bit of a curious mystery around how he was able to contract this, despite the fact that it is highly contagious. But I would assume they probably don't have a direct sort of path to how this got there. In terms of the game day situation here, Ira, we'll probably find out more on Monday when we actually do speak to Chris Thompson, which I assume we will be able to. But it's going to be like Mike Norvell's ingredients and his recipe. But, I mean, Thompson's going to be the chef. He's going to be doing the cooking. So I do wonder, do you have a feel? I mean, do you think we'll see maybe more of his sort of style or something different than what Kenny and Mike like to do if Thompson's ultimately thrust into that responsibility? I would think Mike Norvell would give him the latitude, given that he was such an important hire for him.
Possibly, but I think it's going to be much more of him knowing what Mike Norvell wants. And I think, that's where I've had a few people ask along the week, along the day since this news broke, why maybe you wouldn't go with Odell Higgins. He was the interim head coach a couple times before, had some success in that role. But I really think this is a case where they really want somebody who knows exactly what Mike Norvell wants. Odell's been busy coaching the defensive tackles. He's been busy with the defensive line. He's not in all the offense meetings. He's not talking to all those other guys the way he would have been before a bowl game as the interim head coach. So I think this is good. They see this as more seamless. Chris Thompson is actually he's always at Mike Norvell's side. He's the deputy head coach. He's part of. He consults Mike Norvell on a lot of decisions. So I think he's going to handle things the way he thinks Mike Norvell would. The other part is I think Mike Norvell's made it pretty clear that he's a big planner, an over planner. And so I think you're going to have that list of first of all, there's going to be the scripted plays to start the game. Kenny Dillingham, the offensive coordinator, they've talked about how they both see the game the same way. So he'll be the primary play caller. Where it'll come up with the head coach is questions about dealing with the officials, questions about go for it or not go for it, to try to block a kick, to not block a kick, to be safe in certain situations or to be aggressive. So those kinds of things, Chris Thompson will be making those calls, but you'd like to think that he's going to be following what Mike Norvell would want. Whereas, again, like Odell Higgins probably hasn't worked with Mike Norvell quite as much. He's only coached one game with him. Chris Thompson not only has worked with him closely here, worked with him for a couple years at Arizona State. He actually coached him. They've known each other for years and years. So I think it's going to be closer to what Mike Norvell wants than probably any other coach could do.
Again, Florida State head football coach Mike Norvell on Saturday announces that he has tested positive for COVID-19. He will miss at least 10 days of coaching. He will not be the coach when Florida State takes the field against Miami. It will be Chris Thompson. And part of that statement also from Athletics Director David Coburn was that they had been in communication with Miami, and there's no reason to believe that game is in jeopardy of occurring or not occurring, rather. So onward, another crazy chapter in the post-national championship Florida State history here that we're having to deal with. Do check out warchant.com. Stay connected for the latest. We do assume we'll probably speak to Thompson on Monday. So do stay connected again with your ultimate Seminoles sports source, warchant.com. Ira, thanks for your time and, more importantly, your knowledge.
Thanks, Aslan.